Hey, Engine Doc back with you again. Got another engine to look at here. This time we've got another Fairbanks Morse. These are kind of my favorite common engine. This is a 3-horse. And going from the serial number up here, it's a 1920. It's in the kind of shape I like to find them, rusty and crusty. Rusty, crusty, and dusty. It's been sitting around for a long time. But so far, initially, it looks fine. I don't see any cracks or breaks. So we're going to take a look at it here. It's throttle governed, and it's got a couple pieces missing here on the governor linkage. The governor linkage from here to the carburetor here is missing. That's no big deal. There's a screw missing there. Up here on the carburetor or the mixer, somebody's kind of fabricated up maybe some kind of a mixture screw there for the tank mixture, and then the starting bowl mixture is over here. It don't have a knob on it, but the carburetor, this is the gasoline bowl for starting it for kerosene. Rusty and crusty, so the mixer is going to have to come off and be cleaned up. Just the typical usual stuff. The valves are not stuck, but they're kind of gummy. The flywheels appear to turn true. I don't see any bends anywhere or anything like that. I didn't get a crankshaft fender with it. There's a sheet metal fender that goes on here, comes around and attaches. Did not get a mag, but I have a mag for it, so I'm going to see if that'll fit soon. I'm just going to clean it up. I've unscrewed the grease cups here. First thing I do is get rid of all the old grease. That's got some what appears to be lithium grease in there, which is not correct. So I'm going to clean that out. I started to loosen these bolts and take the piston out. I always want to look at the bore before I ever try to crank it over too much or even try to start it, just to make sure there's no sand, grit, rust, scores, whatever's going on in the cylinder. We'll take a look at that here in a little bit. The gears are real good shape. Even the little governor gear down there, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's good shape. No tank. That's okay. If the engine turns out to be a good engine, I will reveal a plan for it at a later time, and we'll go from there. So we'll get the piston out and have a look at the bore. Start there. Clean the grease cups. The oiler tube needs to be removed. It's loose in there, and it turns, but it's bent. I can't get it out without a little persuasion, so we'll do that and go from there. So there's your overview. 3-horse Fairbanks Morse, 1920 is what it dates to. And if you looked at my other videos, there's another 3-horse, and it's a Model C, Z style C. It's self-oiling. This one is not. This one's more of a farm type engine, older, heavier, bigger, slower running. This one's rated at 475, and so I think it's going to do real well with my plan for it here. So let's take a gander at it. Alright, I'm going to cheat this one. Try to pull this out. Oh, there we go. Without taking the head off. Alright, let's have a look at these rings. Water. Lots of water. Some rust. Let me get a flashlight, we'll look at the bore. Okay, looking up in the bore here, I got my flashlight set in there. Just looking up in there, you can't really see a whole lot. What I see is lacking. It's lacking any score, and it's looking pretty good initially. I got to get some rags and some solvent and mop that out in there and clean it and see what it looks like. But initially, it looks pretty good. Now, I'm not going to take the head off unless I just have to do the valves. I think the valves are okay, but I'm not going to take the head off unless I just absolutely have to. So the main thing I wanted to check was all the friction surfaces. And the other thing you want to look at on these old engines is you want to lift up on the crankshaft and see if there's any play in the bearings. And this one I do not detect any, so I'm probably not going to go into the mains, but I will clean the grease cups and shoot new grease in it. So I'll get that cylinder mopped out here next. We'll see what it looks like up close. Okay, got the cylinder mopped out here, and there's some rust and stuff in there, just very light surface rust, no gouges, no scores, which is good. So, tell you, the more I look at this engine, the more I think I'm going to do a complete restore to running on it. I was just going to patch it and see if it runs, but I think I'm going to go a little further than that. I'm not going to paint it or anything like that, but I am going to do a little bit better job. I may go ahead and pull the head too. So, just as well, I don't find anything wrong with the engine, anything broken or anything like that. So, the only thing I found was it was out of time, and I'll show you here. This gear is out of time on the crank here, and I'll show you what I mean here in a second. So I'm going to be having my hand on this rocker and turn the crankshaft. I'll put you on a stand here and let you see what I'm talking about here. Okay, I set you up on a stand here, and you are looking at the back of the engine, of course, and I'm going to go ahead and get this set up where I can turn this, and I've got my hand on the rocker up here so I can tell when it opens the exhaust. And that's how you time these. I'm going to go through the sequence. Okay, here the exhaust valve is just opening. Here's the exhaust stroke as the piston pushes the exhaust out. Here's the intake stroke. The atmospheric valve opens and pulls a fresh charge of fuel in. Here's a compression stroke. We're compressing the fuel and air mixture, and about, I usually go 10 degrees or so, 5-10 degrees when I'm not working these engines real hard. Is where I like to time them at for the ignition sequence, and there it is right there. There's top dead center, and here's the power stroke, pushing the piston back, and now we get ready for the exhaust event. And right there, it's cracking open the exhaust valve right now, which is, I think, too early. I'd like to change it a tooth or two and have it, my rule of thumb is to crack the exhaust valve open just before bottom dead center, which would be right there. Right there is bottom dead center, and right about there is where I like to start cracking that exhaust valve open. And it's open during this duration right here. And now in my hand, right there, that exhaust valve just closed. Well, I like for that exhaust valve to close on up here about 10 degrees before. So that tells me the gear teeth are not meshed correctly here on the cam, and I'm going to have to take this cam assembly off anyway because I want to inspect everything on it, make sure there's nothing broken, and go ahead and make the parts that it needs. Also, I think there was a rotary mag on here before. I'm not sure. It may have been run on a battery too, because they've got a screw in right here. That bolt right there doesn't belong there. As you can see, it was drilled in the side of the cam gear. here's the two places here where the roller goes that trips the magneto, and I'll show you the magneto later. I've got it over there in a box. I've had it for years. It was I got it rebuilt, put it away, and never used it. I've had it probably 12-15 years, just sitting in a box waiting on an engine. So I'm going to go ahead and get this governor assembly off. We'll get a good look at the cam, make sure it's in good shape, and the more I look at this engine, the more I find it really doesn't have a whole lot of wear on it, so it should be a good candidate. And I'll go ahead and let you in on the secret. I plan on putting this in a tractor, so we'll go ahead and complete the disassembly, and I'll be back with you in a little bit. Okay, the magneto that I may use on this engine is the Bosch AB33. Like I said, I've had this mag for a long time, and it's ready to go. It's in pretty good condition. It's been rebuilt many years ago. We'll see if it still works. It trips off the cam gear. But here's an issue I found. Got the cam gear and everything all cleaned up here in the governor system, and first of all, I noticed this screw was broken and just kind of laying there. That's for this spring system right here that dampens the movement of the weights. But then I got to noticing this. This piece here is almost cut in two, and there's lots of galling in here where things have gone awry here with this finger. This finger's loose, and it's loose in the screws here that hold it on. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's kind of upside down for me too. Anyway, these screws have worked loose. Let me set you on a tripod here. So as the engine speeds up, these balls fly out, and it pushes a pin out here and pushes this lever and closes the carburetor butterfly. But at some point, this blade here that weight boss there actuates, the blade has gotten loose, and the darn thing has come underneath here and gotten under there and done that. For quite a while. It's worn this pretty bad. That was about to cut that little boss off, and that's just not right. So we're going to have to repair that, get that to run back out there. We're either going to have to maybe have to weld up a little bit here, or find another weight that's got this piece on it and do a repair, fix this. So that's I'm really glad that I decided to take this apart. Otherwise you can't see this when it's mounted on the engine. So a little bit of repair work to do, but so far that's all I found wrong with the engine. Okay, so what I've done here is I've actually made a new pin for this. This little spring finger here was able to work too far back and forth and actually came off of the finger down here on the flyweight. So I took this apart and drilled through there and drilled it oversized by one size and made a new pin for it, and now that's nice and tight, stays put, and that'll fix that so that this won't come off of here anymore and do damage. So my next thing is to repair this little finger on this governor weight here. And get the shot a little tighter for you there. As you can see, this spring has actually fallen down here before and cut a groove in this little protrusion here on this governor weight, and it has allowed that to almost cut clear through. So I'm going to pull the governor weight off and actually just braze that up with some bronze, and that'll strengthen that back again, be good as new again, I hope. So I'll show you how this governor comes apart here. Before I take it apart though, I'll explain that there's a bolt goes in here and with a thumb wheel on it that you can actually adjust. And this whole mechanism, the sole purpose of this whole mechanism is to apply spring pressure against the governor here and allow you some speed control. So when you tighten this spring down, and that pushes on these governor weights, and on the internal spring in there, I'll show you here in a minute, and counteracts it a little bit and allows some speed control. That's the whole idea of this whole system right here, is engine speed control. And what I mean by engine speed control is that the user can adjust the operating RPM. The governor actually controls the speed of the engine, and that varies with the amount of load on the engine. But this thumb wheel here is where you can adjust it from, let's say, 375 to 475, just speed it up or slow it down a little bit. So I'm going to take this unit here off, and one of the problems was it had the wrong size bolt in there, and that's another thing that allowed this thing to slip out of position and get into the wrong area there on the weights. But how this comes apart is this is actually threaded on, and off camera I loosened it, so all I gotta do now is just unthread it here, and I'll show you what we've got. There's the governor, the fly weights, and that's that assembly. And I will be cutting this pin here. I have to cut this pin. It's hammered over on each side like a rivet. And I'll have to cut that pin out of there in order to remove this weight and braze this up. I don't want to get this hot because there's a spring in here. There's another bolt that goes in here that you saw earlier that was broken and folded over. That bolt pushes on this spring, and that actually controls the dampening of the weights. If they're too loose, the governor will be will react too fast, and if it's too tight, the governor will be sluggish to react. So that's an adjustment for that with this little bolt here. But I don't want to ruin this spring with heat, so I'm going to remove the weight, and then I'll make a new pin for it and put it back in after I get the repair done on the damage here. Anyway, this is the governor spring. This is actually this piece here goes in there, and like so, and these little arms there push on that and push that rod through, and then your governor gear just slips out like that. It's threaded like so. And if you go to take yours apart, slow, easy pressure on this. Just keep, slow and easy pressure on that will release those threads. I don't know if there's any kind of thread locker on that or not. I doubt it. But that's how you get this assembly apart. Okay, here's the governor spring, or actually the governor gear. And there's an adjustment in here. I actually took a screwdriver and adjusted that plug. You can screw that plug out on the threads and actually slow the engine down by taking some spring pressure away. The spring goes in this end like this. That pin protrudes, trying to keep this in the shot here, protrudes through the hole like that. So the spring is, and that's what slows the engine down, pushes the arm, the lever arm slows the engine down. And this is the pin. So you can adjust that, and I'm going to slow it down just a little bit because I don't want this engine in working mode for what I'm using it for. 250, 300 RPM is my goal, and we'll give that, see if we can reach that goal by making these adjustments. Just want to let you know that that little plug also moves in there. And here I've loosened it, and that's what it looks like. So I'll stick it back in there. I think I'm going to start with that about flush with the edge of the gear here. And I'll screw that back in with a screwdriver over in the vise. But I just wanted to show you that detail of the governor too. And here I screwed everything back together so you can see how it looks. I've got the plug in there just shy of being flush with the edge of the gear, and of course when the flyweights swing out from centrifugal force, out comes the plunger. See that? And that's how the governor works to mechanically operate the throttle linkage. So I'm going to leave that about there. That's probably a quarter of an inch out, and I can tell a difference in the amount of pressure it takes to operate the flyweights here. So we'll see what that does for it. Just a matter of experimenting with different engine speeds. And it's not real pretty, but it's fixed. So I'll go ahead and make a new pin and reassemble it and be done with this governor project. Governor. And here's the assembly back together. The governor assembly is completed. And there's the repaired finger for the speed control. There's a new bolt. Got new pin put in here. So I had to take this out to braze it. The roller's freed up. It rolls on the cam. It's cam follower. And the grease circs or grease cups are clean, ready for new grease. So this assembly is ready to put back on the engine. And back over to the engine, I did decide to go ahead and take the head off, and I'm glad I did. There's some things to repair here. Everything is in pretty good condition. I've cleaned the parts. Here's the rocker assembly. A lot of these are broken. They get broken over the years. This one's good. I'll have to make some new gaskets, and that's no big deal. Here's the old gaskets I can use for patterns. I'm going to make a new head gasket for it as well. Got the mixer or the carburetor taken apart. I'm going to sandblast the bowl inside there, clean it up good, sandblast the interior of it, and put it back together. And it's in good condition. And there's the compensator valve. It's good shape. So it's on to the cylinder head. Pardon the messy bench, but I've got the cylinder head over here on another bench, and I've been grinding valves. Here's the exhaust valve. It's been ground and lapped, and it looks pretty good. And getting ready to grind the intake valve here. I'll show you that process. But before we grind the intake valve, I want to show you what I found wrong with the cylinder head. You see that crack? Oh, wait a minute, maybe you don't see that crack. That crack's hard to see. There is a little tiny crack right here. It's been frozen and busted. I doubt if that crack leaked very much. It's very fine. It would just leak water. Turn it down here. Here's the cleaned up surface. And I've seen these heads busted wide open. But this is just barely cracked. So I'm going to make a repair on that. And don't be scared of these cracks, guys. These things, 90% of them at some time over the last 100 years have had water left in them and gotten cracked. So guys would forget and go in the house at night and get done with the engine and go in there and didn't realize it was going to turn off freezing overnight, and they come out the next morning, their engine be froze up and busted. Very common back then. No antifreeze back then. So what I'm going to do is probably grind the inside here, inside this water chamber. Probably take a needle grinder and go in there and grind that. I'm going to put a little JB weld on it. I'll probably V this out, put a little JB on that. I'm not going to do anything at all with the outside. We'll just leave it. And if it causes trouble later, I'll take the head off and braze it. But I'm going to try the JB weld approach this time. Okay, I think I showed this in another video on another engine, but here's my old antique Black & Decker valve grinder. Doesn't have any coolant system on it or anything like that. Never did have. It's just an old flat belt drive, and of course the motor that runs the grinding wheel is direct drive, but this works quite well for grinding valves. Why use a modern machine, right? Alright, I've got the intake valve set up here. I've made a little bit of grinding on it, but it needs quite a bit more, so here we go. Okay, as you can see, this area here still needs a little bit. This area is coming out pretty good so far, but it just takes a little time. We'll get there. I like to keep the grinding wheel moving back and forth across the face of the valve. That helps to keep from grooving the grinding wheel. And so on. Stop to check it there. It's coming out. show you the finished product here when I'm done. Well, let's have a look at it. Looks pretty good. I think I like it. Oh yeah. Let's take it over and lap it. Well, let's put a little compound on it. Stick him in there. I don't think it's going to take a whole lot. You hear that compound get quiet. The abrasive particles actually break down. And you can feel it get smoother. Okay, let's have a look at it. Take it out here and wipe it off here. And that seat's a little wide. But we don't care. It should work just fine. Get all the compound off of it. Should be good to go. Okay, getting ready to make some gaskets here, and I'm using a product called Seetemp, S-E-E-T-E-M-P. Lots of woodworkers use it to make templates with. It cuts real easy, and it's transparent, so I'm going to use it on the cylinder head here and the other gaskets. And what I've done is just laid it out here and marked it with a Sharpie, and got the air damper gasket in here, then the mixer gasket here. So I'm going to cut this out, try to make my lines clean as possible. Then all I'll have to do is trace those onto a piece of gasket material, and it saves a lot of doing blind work where you really can't see the shapes that you're cutting. You know, of course you can use all the other methods that you want, hammering it out and stuff like that, but I'm going to try this. I've used this Seetemp before. It's great stuff. And I'll have a set of templates on file in case I need to make any more gaskets, or in case anyone else needs a gasket, I can whip one out real quick. So I'm going to give this a shot. Okay, I've got the tracings done here, and I've taken a Sharpie, or a X-Acto knife, and traced around my Sharpie lines. And the beauty of the Seetemp is once you get a score there, you can just pop it out, kind of bend it a little bit, pop it out, and your cutouts pop right out like that. And you can go through, and after you score your lines, just go through and pop out these pieces you don't want in the gasket template and go from there. Do the centerpiece here. Yeah, before I pop that centerpiece out, I'll do these outside ones here. I've already taken a standard gasket punch and punched the holes here. That was just much easier and quicker than trying to run a a knife blade around that tight of a circle. But just peel it up out of here. Let me make another score here. It's wanting to tear in a place I don't want it to. And there it is. Real quick works to make templates with, for any project actually. C-Temp, look it up on the web. It's pretty good stuff. Okay, so here's my little crack right here. And it goes through to the outside. I think I showed you that before. Anyway, there it is right there. Just a little bitty guy. I doubt if that would even leak. But I have taken a burr, a little 1/8 inch burr, and I've ground that out in there. I don't know if the camera will allow you to see that or not, but it's been V'd out in there. And I'm going to take super glue now. I'm going to fill that crack up with super glue, see if it leaks through to the outside. This is the real thin stuff, thin as water. So then I'll set that up, let that set, and put some JB weld in there on the inside, fill my little area where I ground the V out right there with JB, and we're going to call it a day. So that's how I'm going to fix that crack. I've actually drizzled quite a bit of glue in there, and it's puddling in there now. Can't hardly see it from your vantage point, but it is. And then on the outside it's not leaking through at all, through the crack, and that stuff's water thin and just follows any contour or crack. So I don't think it was a leaker to start with. I made a couple of little knobs to weld on the end of the needles to finish those off, and that's about it. Kind of shined up the crankshaft a little bit here, took some rust off of it in preparation of moving the wheels. Well, this wheel here has got to be moved out in order to put a pulley on it. More about that later. But there she is. The old Fairbanks 3-horse. Let's look at it running. Thanks for watching. Okay, here's a final overview of the 3-horse Fairbanks after reassembly, and ended up making a speed control knob for it here, which works fine. Throttle linkage. I've had the engine running. I'll have video of that after this clip, and it runs good. Made a timer for it. That's a temporary timer. I'll show you that here. And it just this brass finger touches that bolt. Let me roll it around here and show you. Roll it around backwards here, and I won't either. I'll bring it around here. Bring it up on compression. Here comes that brass screw. Well, it's not actually a brass screw. It's coming up on the brass finger. And when that screw comes up and touches that finger right there, the buzz coil lights off and sparks the plug. So anyway, just wanted to show you the brief overview of it here. And valves seal real well. I put a temporary pipe nipple in here just to keep the threads in here clean. Our little crack down here, it doesn't leak. The engine does have water in it now, and it doesn't leak at all. I put a little JB in there after I run that super glue in there, and I got a new oiler pipe. Got to find an oiler for it yet. This one here is not good enough for it. Needle valves, I've got to finish those yet. I don't have them in here. I've got to finish those. Both of them work well. I've got to put the little knobs on them.